Hello and welcome to Something Rhymes with Purple. It is me, Susie Dent, and my lovely co-presenter sitting opposite me in my sitting room.
I feel this is a move in the right direction, Susie, and it's a charming sitting room. I like it very much.
No, I'd really like to light a fire, but I think the crackle might be a bit too much.
Marvellous.
This is Gyles Brandreth, in case anybody was in any doubt whatsoever. Something Rhymes with Purple, Gyles. We've established that one of the rhymes, and there are a few actually, is herple, which is to walk with a limp, which of course involves a gammy leg. And that's quite appropriate because today we're talking about the body and our anatomy, not necessarily our personal anatomy. But is there anything about your body, may I ask, that you're not too keen on or that you love?
Why you're going to say much more than me this week, because I'm quite squeamish when it comes to the body. My body awareness is nil. I'm embarrassed by my body. I feel squeamish. I always did. Hated it at school. Sharing the showers. Ooh, all that.
Well, the reason I love parts of the body when it comes to language is that they're hidden behind so many of the words that we use all the time. So regular viewers of Countdown, I might even have mentioned it on Purple, will know that I love the word sarcasm. Which goes back to the tearing of flesh. It goes back to a Greek word for flesh and burning. And it's linked to sarcophagus because the limestone coffins that you will find they used for sarcophagi used to decompose the body by sort of burning the flesh. So a sarcastic comment burns the flesh as you deliver it.
Just give me sarcophagus. Which part of sarcophagus is the burning?
Sarc means flesh.
Sarc means flesh.
And phagus means eating. So it's flesh eating.
My gosh, so sarcophagus, which you put the body into, is eating, as it were. It's a metaphor, really. It isn't actually doing it. Eating the flesh. And sarcasm is a remark so that it
Which
eats
is actually doing
it
in a way because it's decomposing the flesh because of this particular quality of the limestone, the particular property.
Good. So a limestone sarcophagus eats the flesh, and our sarcastic remark eats the flesh.
Okay, I'm going to whiz through these because they're quite a few of them.
Through them. They're wonderful. That's why people have tuned in to hear.
We've got so much to pack into this programme. Dishevelled goes back to the French déchevelé, meaning your hair's all over the place.
Your hair, as in cheveux.
Déchevelé, but you can't be chevelled as a result, sadly. You can just be dishevelled. Supercilious has got cil in it, C-I-L, which is French for your eyebrow. So if you're supercilious, you're super above, cil, eyebrow, is raised. So essentially you're raising your eyebrows.
I'm raising my eyebrows as I speak.
You are. Gorgeous. Something gorgeous once applied to your gorge or your throat because it referred to beautiful necklaces.
And I know that a French word for a bra or brassiere, which is a French word, of course, isn't it, is a soutien-gorge.
It is.
Because the gorge is the throat, isn't it?
Yes, and by the extension of your throat.
So it's a delicate way of putting it. Your eyes could not sort of glance down. Mine never would, of course. So the throat is the gorge, but the bosom is the... So the soutien means hold up, doesn't it?
We can stay with boobs because... Brassiere, your brassiere, for which bra is short, actually goes back to a completely different part of the anatomy. And the first people to wear bras were men because it goes back to the French bras, meaning arm. And a brassiere was originally armour for your arm in medieval days.
Put me right on this. It's an urban myth that it was Franz Titslinger who invented the brassiere.
I've never heard that.
Oh, it's a well-known thing.
Is it?
When I was at school as a little boy, they always said, you know who invented the brassiere? It was Franz Titslinger. And I wasn't sure, because the man who invented the Mars chocolate was called Mars.
He was.
It's not named after the planet.
Yes.
Unlike the Milky Way, which is named after the Milky Way.
Yes.
So you never quite know with these things.
No.
And we know that Leotard was named after the Leotard, Mr. Leotard.
Jules. Well... Do you know, I have no idea, but I'm going to have an interesting bit of search history on my computer later. When I look him up. I quite like caprice because that means hedgehog head. It's apparently a reference to what goes back to the Latin for it anyway, capo and riccio. Apparently in reference to your hair standing on end. So it doesn't quite fit somebody who's capricious and just who flits from one thing to another. But I think the idea is of just sort of startled inconstancy, probably. And hair standing on end riffles through so many different words in English. Horrible goes back to horrere in Latin, which again meant to have bristling hairs on your arms and body.
As usual, we're trying to do too much. We could just have started with the head.
They've got so much body to fit in here.
No, but because some people are taking notes, apparently.
Are they?
Yeah, because we don't produce a sheet of notes. So horrible is to do with your hair.
Yes, horrere.
Say that again.
The hair stand on end. So HOLLERE.
A hair-raising experience is horrible.
Exactly. So, yes, and melancholy as well. Melancholy goes back to the idea of the humours. In Middle Ages, medicine was based entirely on the humours and what balance your body was showing in terms of blood and bile and all sorts. So sanguine, you will know, means full of blood. If you're a sanguine disposition, an excess of blood was supposed to make you quite serene in some ways, whereas melancholy goes back to black bile. The mela there is the same that you'll get in melanoma, meaning black. So if you had an excess of black bile in your body, you were melancholic. So many that kind of go back to those medieval beliefs.
Can we just exhaust the head first? We've done horrible, we've done the hair, we've done dishevelled. Have we done anything to do? We've done the eyebrows. Anything from the eyes?
Well, my favourite one, which I know I've mentioned before, but I could talk about this all day. The pupil of the eyes is named after the Latin pupilla, little doll, with the idea that when you stare into the pupil of somebody's eye, you see a tiny doll-like representation of yourself. It's so beautiful, that, isn't it?
I think we must have discussed this before because it's all to do with the early stages of falling in love.
Yeah.
Because
that's right. Pupils dilating. We talked about this, didn't we?
Yes, and basically people are falling in love with themselves. They think they're falling in love with somebody else. That early stages of, I could be you, you are me, me are you, we are together, we are one. In fact, it's all about, it's me, me, me.
It's narcissism, isn't it?
Yeah, afraid so.
You're right.
Yeah, my wife has explained that to me over the years. Gyles, you think it's all you, you, you. In fact, it isn't. It's all me, 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 she says. Oh, is it? Is anything else in the eyes? Dilated eyes? The iris?
Apple of one's eye.
What's the origin of that?
That goes back to the belief that the pupil was actually a solid spherical object, a bit like an apple. That was believed in ancient times. And so the apple of your eye, again, was the pupil, the solid pupil of your eye. And because it was so important to life, being able to see, it was seen as something to be cherished.
Who was the famous actor who had a false eye and used to take it out and sort of disconcert the audience and the other characters by taking it out, sucking it and popping it back in?
No idea.
Trying to remember what he was called. I think it was Esme something. Was it Esme Percy? And occasionally it would fall out on the stage and all the other actors would get out of the way as he'd run across the stage trying to pick up his eyeball.
Isn't it funny how we're squeamish about eyes? Like, they are so precious that when I first signed my organ donor form, I missed out the eyes because I thought that's the one thing.
Were you applying for somebody else's private parts? What were you asking for?
No, I was just like, when I died, giving everything away. And then but I kept my eyes, I held them back. But now I have to say I've donated everything. Well, I will donate everything.
Do you know they didn't want mine? I went in and volunteered. No, anything.
Oh.
They said, no, I don't think so. I said, please, I'm giving it all to science. They said, no, thank you very much.
Oh.
Well, apparently I'm past it. I'm too old. They want young, fresh meat like you.
Well, the other really good thing to do is, I don't know if there's an age limit to this, is there's a brilliant organisation called Delete Blood Cancer where you can sign up, and if you're a match, there are some kids particularly and dire need of bone marrow. So that's a really good thing to do.
Of course, you should.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm rather in favour of this policy. I think it's happened in Wales already, that you have to opt out.
Yes.
That basically...
You donate by default. I think that's really good.
That's a good thing. So let's just stick with the eyes. Eyelashes? No?
No, I don't think there's anything to say there.
Cheeks. Cheek. Dancing cheek to cheek.
Yes.
That's nice. The mouth, the teeth?
The teeth, skin of one's teeth.
Yes, what's the origin of that?
A biblical reference where somebody escapes. Who was it? It was in the book of Job, that's right. And Job is subjected to horrible trials, apparently by Satan. And it says, my bone cleaveth to my skin and to my flesh, and I am escaped with the skin of my teeth. And I think the idea is that, the porcelain of your tooth is just so slender and so incredibly thin that
skin of my teeth.
It was by the narrowest margin. I think that's.
This is why I love the English language. You speak of the Bible, the book of Job in the Old Testament. But of course, that phrase will have come from the translation of the Bible in around 1605, that sort of time.
Yeah, possibly
the King James
earlier.
Version.
Or the Wycliffe.
Or the Wycliffe version, which is sort of 1588.
Yeah.
So the point is that these phrases have got into, there's something poetic about them that gets into the air and people cling on to them. There's a play, isn't there, called The Skin of Our Teeth, by Thornton Wilder.
Ah.
Yeah. Great American playwright.
It was American Prairies I always associate him with.
Did he write American Prairies?
I don't think he did. No, just in terms of the big, vast lands of the Western frontier. That's what I associate Thornton Wilder
We
with.
called one of our cats Oscar because he was wild, and then we had one who was even worse. We called him Thornton. Okay.
Very good.
So we're in the mouth, the skin of our teeth. Anything else? Gums?
I don't think so.
Lips? Hot lips?
Hot lips.
Nose?
Nose. Well, we talked about nose. Oh, well, being nosy, stick your nose in. That's a sort of
They're
fairly
obvious because
nosy
that's what
Parker.
you do.
We don't know if there was originally a man called Mr. Parker who stuck his nose in everywhere, but the idea is it's probably a park keeper who was being a bit of a voyeur.
Oh, really?
Teeth. I can do teeth.
Yeah.
Long in the teeth.
Long in the
tooth even. That goes back to people purchasing a horse who would judge the age of a horse by the size of its canines, because apparently horse canines become a lot longer as the horse gets older. So in order to ascertain the age of a horse, people would look into the mouth, literally into the horse's mouth. And it's linked to don't look a gift horse in the mouth. In other words, if something's been given to you, don't be so rude as to check out its quality by seeing how long in the tooth it is.
Long in the tooth relates to horses. And of course, does that happen? Do horses?
Generally, don't know. I've never looked.
I have to say,
never dared.
People, because my hearing is going slightly through Anno Domini, my age, I'm getting closer to people when I speak to them.
I really struggle with that, I have to say. I don't like invasion of personal space when people talk to you.
Nor do I. Well, that's why I insisted on this table. I think the grill you've put across the middle of the table is slightly offensive, but there we are. That's the way you want to be. It's your sitting room, not mine. But no, leading into people's faces, particularly in busy restaurants or coffee shops, there's a lot of clatter going on.
Yeah.
So they can hear you and you can hear them. I'm now seeing their mouths more, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing. These old snaggly teeth. And that's why I've done this Invisalign thing, where you put a little bit of plastic on your teeth. And fun enough, it's been a bore, but it does work. And I think one should not try and grow long in the tooth. I want to stick to the head because I think we're going to have time to go beyond the...
No, we have to. We've got so many to do.
We can do more of the body another week. We haven't done the ears yet. Cloth ears. What's the origin of cloth ears?
I think, honestly, I looked at that in the OED because I had a feeling you were going to ask me that one. The OED doesn't really give any explanation. I guess it dates from 1912. It's the first record they have, and I guess it's just simply the idea that you have cloth ears so you can't hear anything.
Because they're not real. They're not functioning ears. They're like a bit of cloth stuck on the side of your face.
Or cloth over your ears or whatever. So I'm not allowed to do any of the rest of the body.
Well, let's work down the body. Let's just be organised.
Okay.
Swan's neck.
A swan's neck. Beautiful, long, elegant.
Simple as that.
Yes.
You're likening it to a swan.
Yes.
Come down to the shoulders. Chip on the shoulder.
Chip on the shoulder. It's said to originate with a US tradition in the 19th century we're talking about here, of spoiling for a fight, really, by carrying a wood chip or a chip of bark on your shoulder as a sign that you were up for a fight.
Oh, I'm up for a bit of action.
Or to settle an argument or whatever.
So you literally pick up a bit of bark, a bit of wood, put it on your shoulder, into your epaulette. I'm wearing.
If you had one, you are wearing epaulettes
jumper
today.
with epaulettes.
Yeah.
You tuck it in there, and that would say to people, "I'm ready for it."
Yes.
Are you up for it? I'm ready for it.
Yes.
It's a funny phrase.
That's one
now it
theory.
means something quite different, doesn't it?
Well, that's one theory, because that sort of explains that you're up for a fight, I suppose, and so you might be a bit chippy. You might just be feel a bit prejudiced, which I think is how it's kind of developed today. Yeah. There's one other theory which doesn't really, again, explain the modern meaning, and that's that dockers years ago, centuries ago now, were allowed to carry timber home. It's one of the perks of the job that from the dockyard they would be able to bring firewood or valuable wood home, and so they would sort of carry big chunks of timber on their shoulder. But again, it doesn't really explain why that dissatisfaction has crept in.
Yes, because the idea of chip on your shoulders is something, a kind of resentment you feel about the world. It's a resentment,
it's a prejudice, isn't it? Really?
And you carry it around with you.
Yeah.
It's a kind of thing you got on your shoulder all the time.
Yeah.
and you can't, you bring it up when it, so...
Doesn't quite explain it. I can tell you about cold shoulder because there's another lovely story attached to this, which is that you know the story of humble pie. A lot of people are familiar with this. Humble pie being a pun on umbles pie. Umbles being the offals of an animal, which were once served to the so-called peasants at banquets, whilst the aristocracy enjoyed the best parts of meat, best cuts. So humble pie is a riff on that. Well, cold shoulder is a similar theme, or the idea is that essentially the aristocracy would only offer cold lamb to people who were considered below the salt. In other words, at the end of the table, which was below the salt cellar, where the peasants sat, and they themselves would tuck into sort of hot beef or whatever.
And so the salt is there because salt was incredibly expensive.
Yeah, valuable
and it was only
commodity.
for the grand people. And if you sat below the salt, you were nobody.
Yes,
and
it was almost like a marker on a table as to who sat where. So
and
that's
the riffraff, they were given the cold shoulder.
Yeah, it's not actually true. It's a lovely story, but we think the idea is simply that you will turn your shoulder away in coldness and disdain.
Okay.
Is it time for a break?
Let's have a break. And then we've got so many inquiries from our listeners. You see, I'm very pleased. Can I just say, I'm very pleased we've concentrated on the head and shoulders, because maybe they'll be advertising with us. no, because then we can move on. We can move on to other things in due course. Let's not rush it.
Okay. Shampoo,
Susie.
by the way, mentioning head and shoulders, goes back to the Hindi for massage. So the first shampoos were actually beautiful head massages. I'm well up for that.
Oh, really? A shampoo? I can't bear strangers touching me. You go to some spa, and the idea of having some strange person manhandling you.
Oh, I'd love that.
Would you?
Oh, massage is the best thing ever.
Well, I think probably we know each other too well, because I wouldn't be the straight. Another I put on a funny white coat. I can't bear the idea of being manipulated by a total stranger.
Head massage. Have you never had a head massage?
No, I certainly haven't.
Oh, good grief! It's the best thing in the world.
Best thing in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, for goodness' sake, woman. Were you telling me the truth, or were you trying to hoodwink me about loving head massages?
Head massage. I could honestly submit to that all day.
Can you trust the people who do it?
Yes. What's the worst that could happen?
My darling mother, in her 90s, went into a massage parlour near her flat, wanting a massage because she had aching bones, a bit of arthritis. And they said to her, she pushed her way through the curtains. Madam, I think you've come for a different kind of massage. Go elsewhere. My poor mother, in her 90s, she was looking. It was a nail parlour. Well, I think, but apparently...
Is that a euphemism? I've not heard that.
Apparently it is.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
Go to nail
I wouldn't need. So, I mentioned hoodwinked there. Hoodwinked. What's the origin of that?
Yeah, often people say, why 40 winks? And it's the same answer, really, to hoodwink, because a wink, I think winken in Old English was to close your eyes entirely. So to take 40 winks was literally to close your eyes for 40 minutes. And why 40? No one knows. But hoodwink is the same thing. Somebody will put a hood over your head to make your eyes close, figuratively, so you couldn't see anything.
Very good. Like putting on a mask if you try to sleep.
Pulling the wool over your eyes, that's another one. Bit of a mystery, this one, but the best guess is it goes back to the really long fashionable wigs that people used to wear, and the idea of pulling the wool over your eyes is pulling the wig down over somebody's eyes so they can't really see what's going on.
I fell out with Joan Collins because
you pulled her wig.
No,
that sounds like a euphemism and a half.
I went to interview her, and she's a brilliant person.
Yeah,
she's highly intelligent. She's a wonderful writer. She's an actress. She's a huge success. She's a phenomenon. And it was a happy and good interview. But I was conscious as the interview proceeded that her wig, I think it was a wig, was getting nearer and nearer her eyebrows. And it was I was writing about it. And anyway, I wrote about it. And there was a little froideur between me and Dame Jones.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it was not gallant, was it?
No.
And now I'm telling the story about it, but it was years ago. And anyway, I think she may have learned the lesson. She's yanked it right back.
I put some photos on Twitter the other day I bought a fringe wig for £8 from Amazon because I wanted to see whether I suited a fringe or not. And it looked fairly ridiculous. Rachel tried it on, predictably it looked absolutely stunning. And then I gave it to Nick. You have to, if anybody wants to have a look at Nick in a wig.
I've seen it.
Oh.
Because I follow you on Twitter.
Okay.
And I've seen it and him. This is Nick Hewer, the host of Countdown, and he looked like one of the Monkees. Do you know the band?
Looked like all sorts of things. I do know the Monkees, yes.
Like the sort of the mock Beatles wearing it.
Yeah, and I'm chomping at the bit.
Yes.
Which, of course, goes back to horses, because you're not letting me do any other parts of the body.
Well, I want to keep something in reserve. I've got down to your shoulders. We're doing, those who haven't seen Naked Attraction, it in reverse.
I'm not doing Naked Attraction. Yes, sorry.
No,
I don't like the we there.
No.
Okay.
So we're doing it in reverse. We've done the head and the shoulders.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go, because there's so much more to say. Okay.
Fair enough. Shall I finish with the albatross around your neck?
I would like to. Am I the albatross around your neck?
No, you're not the albatross around my neck.
Am I the parrot on your shoulder? That's more like it.
You know about this. An albatross around your neck is an annoying burden of some kind. And the albatross, obviously, a large seabird, and you will know this, Charles, goes back to Coleridge's poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner.
He stoppeth 1 and 3, by thy long grey beard, etc.
A sailor shoots a friendly albatross and then is forced to wear its carcass around his neck as a punishment.
You see, I think it's deeper than what you said. I think it is the albatross around your neck is something that the burden that you carry with you for the rest of your life is a terrible thing. It's a wonderful poem by Coleridge. Samuel Taylor.
We're going to be talking about poetry in a podcast
I hope
coming
we will.
soon.
Words. Anyway, so that's the albatross around your neck.
Yeah.
Okay. Good place to end there. We've had lots of correspondence, and we ought to explain. Thank you so much for getting in touch with us at purple, P-U-R-P-L-E, at, as an at, something without a G, else. It's a difficult address, isn't it? We do actually genuinely read all your letters. We can't reply to all of them, but we'll try to cover as many as we can here. So what ones have you picked out from the bag this week?
Lovely email from David Kuntin, who actually has a favourite habit, which is quite similar to one of mine, because he says, I wanted to ask about the origin of using schm as a prefix to essentially disagree with what was suggested. For example, if someone says, I love riding on horseback, he might say, horseback, schmorseback.
Oh, yeah.
And he's wondering if it's related to the Yiddish word schmuck, meaning
that's
fool.
very good.
And the answer is yes, it is Yiddish, as David guessed. And there are so many words that begin with this combination. Fancy schmancy being the one I love. Came into American English by probably Jewish immigrants to America. And so this habit, I guess, dates back to around the 20s, the late 1920s. And yes, schmuck does come into the whole list. That means penis, by the way. And in Polish,
schmuck does?
yes,
I thought that was a schwong.
There's all sorts.
Fine, okay.
So
you're a schmuck is saying you're a penis.
Well, most names for fools, prick, dick, all of that stuff, of course, go back to that, yeah. And in Polish, by the way, a schmock is a grass snake. Just thought I'd throw that in. And also schmaltz, which in Jewish and German cookery is animal fat. So anything schmaltzy is a bit kind of unctuous and greasy. So thank you, David, for that one.
Thank you, David.
Another one here, Giles, from Anita McGregor, who very kindly recommends us to all word lovers. And she says, we introduced her to tartle. Do you remember that? To tartle
I do.
Is to hesitate when introducing somebody because you've forgotten their name. And she has had the awkward experience of forgetting her own name because I think she was trying to remember her maiden name after a divorce and she just couldn't remember what it was in the moment. She said, is there a word for self-tartle? And the answer, Anita, is no, we need one. Svartle? I don't know.
Tartle,
schmartle, there you go. Schmartle even. No, not yet. I did look, and I did look quite extensively, actually. I couldn't find one, so I think we need to make one up.
And to be serious for a moment, you can't just invent a word and think, I've invented a word. It's got to gain currency to be a credible word, hasn't it?
No, I would disagree with that. No, I mean, I think because we don't have an authority in this country, we don't have an academy saying you can do this and you can't do that. People look to the dictionary to be the arbiter, but actually it doesn't mean that if something's not in the dictionary, it doesn't exist as a word. So I had a nice tweet this morning from someone saying, please can you tell your colleagues at the OED, the Oxford English Dictionary, that I've invented a new word, misjumper, which is to put a jumper on inside out or with the label hanging out. Always say that. Yeah, and because it doesn't have to get into the OED for it to be a word. He can or she can use it totally legitimately and it will still be a word. So it is all about currency. and that will dictate whether it gets into the dictionary, but it doesn't mean it's not a word.
Fine. So the dictionary is simply a record of words that have gained some sort of currency.
Yes, but if you've got
and have to have been in print, don't they, to be in the dictionary?
They do, although that might change, I think. We're going to get more and more oral records informing the OED.
So well done. Misjumper's a nice thing, because I'm often doing that. You put it on back to front, inside out.
All the time.
Oh, God, I misjumpered.
No, I do that all the time.
I do.
So, yes, should we carry on?
Give us one more.
Okay, one more, which is from Jenny Schwartz.
Oh, Schwartz again.
That's a whole different kettle of fish. Where's this from, or is it just nonsense? Well, there's a lovely record in print, which is about the earliest one that we can find, from a tour in England and Scotland from 1785. And it says, it's customary for the gentlemen who live near the Tweed to entertain their neighbours and friends with a fête champêtre, which they call giving a kettle of fish. Tents or marquees are pitched near the flowery banks of the river, a fire is kindled, and live salmon thrown into boiling kettles. Sounds very cruel for the salmon. But we think the transfer of that idea of cooking fish in a kettle, which is basically a cooking pot, the transfer of that to a fine mess, or, the really sort of jumbled situation, is probably simply from the mess of fish, scales and bones that would end up in the pot afterwards. That's our best guess. I agree, it's probably not the most plausible one, but that's where we are at the moment. Work goes on.
Work goes on.
I think we have to wrap up.
I think we do. Yeah.
We have to wrap up. What can we finish with in terms of the part of the body? I will look into the pupil of your eye and see myself.
That's it.
And then have 40 winks.
I would know, before we wrap up, I'm not going to give us your trio of exciting words.
Oh, yes, good point.
We always finish with a trio of words from Susie Dent. These may be familiar words with unfamiliar origins, or they may be unfamiliar words that we ought to bring into our currency. And I want maybe next week to talk to you about how, because you introduce us to so many new words all the time, and I find it difficult to remember them. In the moment, I'm excited, and then I think, oh, what was that word? And maybe you've got some tips on how we can get these words into our heads. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are your 3 words for this week? Okay,
well, I'm going to start with a part of the body, seeing as it's fitting. This is a word that means literally death by foot, and it describes putting your foot in it. It's an act of podiacide.
Podiacide, I love it. As in podiatrist, same beginning.
Yes, and the side as in...
suicide.
Patricide, all of that stuff. So Podiacide.
And that's killing yourself with your own foot.
It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, just to give you 2 more parts of the body. But yes, podiacide, I quite like that.
What's the origin of tongue-in-cheek?
Tongue-in-cheek is one.
I know what it is, but
well, because it sounds like you're not quite, you might do that if you were joking. Yeah.
But why is it a joke? Is it tongue-in-cheek? Oh, because is it a gesture you make? Tongue-in-cheek.
I think it might be.
Okay.
Right. The next P, I've got 3 Ps for you today. Good. Nothing to do with bodily Ps. Psithurism.
How do you spell that?
Which I love. P-S-I-T-H. Psithurism. U-R-I-S-M.
Yep.
Psithurism. If you sort of say it very softly and gently, it's quite poetic. It means the whispering of leaves in the wind.
In fact, is the P pronounced? Should it just be Psithurism?
Well, you can pronounce it either way. That's a good point. The dictionary will give both. But there's also another word for that, which I'll throw in for good measure, which is susurration.
Oh, I know that.
Yes, which is gorgeous.
And that's onomatopoeic in a way,
leaves,
isn't it?
Yes.
Susurration.
Yeah, murmur of the sea.
And
kind of
Psithurism.
Okay, there's another P, which we all are guilty of sometimes, me especially. To work in an ineffective way is to ploiter. Ploiter.
Oh, I like that. Who invented that? How long has that been around?
Old dialects. You'll find it in the English dialect dictionary from the 19th century.
I was ploitering. Yeah. Meaning, say it again.
To work in an ineffective way.
To work in ploitering. Well, we've had 30 minutes or so of ploitering here.
Speak for yourself.
Well, no, it's not really done any good, is it?
Hopefully.
It's been totally ineffective.
Shared a bit of fun.
But we have shared a bit of fun.
A few smiles.
We've shared a few smiles. You're the best, you wonderful, capricious thing. Yeah. Hair standing on end?
Hedgehog head. I'm a hedgehog head.
Hedgehog head. Hedgehog head. You live and learn. That's the joy of Something Rhymes with Purple.
And then you die and forget it.
All. Okay, thank you very much for being with us. You can tweet us or email us at purple@somethingelse.com. We can't answer every question, but we'll try our best. Okay, and...
Something Rhymes with Purple is a Something Else production produced by Paul Smith with additional production from Lawrence Bassett, Steve Ackerman and Gully.
Oh, Gully. Why did he get a mention? He isn't even here.